Yo, what's up everybody? Professor V here, and this is a short lecture on historical figures and psychology. Let's go.
There has been a variety of people that have contributed to the field of psychology, even before the term psychology was even coined. Writings on psychology date back as far as early Greek thinkers such as Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates, as the word psychology is derived from the Greek word psyche, literally meaning life or breath, and the Greek word logia, meaning the study of. However, we will fast forward in time in this video to the creation of the first psychology laboratory established in 1879 and move forward with other significant figures in psychology. Beginning with Wilhelm Wundt, often considered the father of psychology, as he established the very first laboratory dedicated to psychological research in Leipzig, Germany in 1879. Wundt was originally a medical doctor, and after working with physiologist and physicist Hermann von Helmholtz on the physiology of sense perception, he developed an interest in psychological research. Wundt developed a method to study mental processes called introspection. Introspection is a systematic and controlled method to approach self-observation of one's own thoughts, feelings, and mental experiences. Basically, it's turning one's attention inward to perform personal reflection on one's consciousness, and through introspection, individuals gain insight into their subjective experiences, such as their thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions. For example, if researchers were interested in understanding the experience of decision-making and the thought processes involved using introspection, they would ask participants to make a series of decisions while engaging in introspection and provide detailed reports of their decision-making processes. Perhaps the decision the participants needed to make was to choose between two job opportunities. After each decision, participants would be instructed to pause and focus on their thoughts, considerations, and the factors that influence their decision. This is called introspection. Wundt eventually was appointed professor of scientific philosophy at Leipzig University. A student of his, Edward Titchener, born in England, and went on to study in Leipzig under Wundt, after which he became a professor at Cornell University in the United States and brought the idea of introspection to the US. However, Titchener used introspection to further research within psychology and developed the idea of structuralism. In structuralism, the focus is on the analysis of the structure and organization of the conscious experience, breaking down mental processes into their basic components, such as sensations, feelings, and images. For example, Titchener broke down components of sensations, such as visuals, to colors and shapes, to understand their organization and interrelationships. This is structuralism. Now, William James, on the other hand, is often considered the father of American psychology. Born in New York, and after completing his studies in Germany, he returned to the US and introduced the first college course in psychology at Harvard University. He wrote one of the most influential and groundbreaking books in psychology, The Principles of Psychology, in which he writes about instincts, emotions, habits, and how physiology affect our behavior. James founded the psychology perspective of functionalism, which focuses on how mental activities and processes enable humans and animals to adapt to their environments. Functionalism takes a more holistic view of mental processes and behavior and considers them as integrated systems rather than focusing solely on their elemental components as in structuralism. Functionalism emphasizes interdependence of various mental processes and how they work together to support individuals' functioning and well-being. Sigmund Freud is one of the most interesting fellows in the history of psychology, to say the very least. As functionalism was developing in the US, the psychoanalytic perspective of psychology was developing in Europe. Freud, an Austrian physician, believed within the human mind consists of an unconscious that is influenced by our unresolved desires, conflicts, and memories of past experiences that lie out of awareness. This is the psychoanalytic perspective, the approach to psychology that focuses on unconscious processes and how they affect behavior and cognition. Freud also believed that the majority of psychological problems develop due to unconscious sexual desires, aggressive motives, or conflicts within. He developed a therapeutic approach to dealing with the unconscious mind that he called psychoanalysis. There is much more that could be said about Sigmund Freud, and will be said in other videos.
Hey everyone again, I just wanted to hop in here right quick to talk about VitalSource. VitalSource.com is an e-textbook website that I have used and trusted since I was a graduate student. With a VitalSource e-textbook, you can quickly search within your textbook, print from, make custom note cards, highlight, bookmark, and even have the book read aloud to you. VitalSource carries textbooks from a wide variety of publishers, which can all be accessed on your desktop computer or on the VitalSource app for mobile devices. Check them out if you're still in need of textbooks this semester by clicking on my affiliate link in the description below. Now, back to the video.
Now for some more modern figures in psychology that have had a large impact on the science of psychology. Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist who was studying the digestive systems in dogs, noticed a phenomenon. In his experiments, he measured how salivation increased during eating and noticed that the dogs began salivating when they first saw the person who gave them the food. This led to groundbreaking research on how reflexes could be conditioned, as seeing a person isn't a reason to salivate, yet the dogs did so. Pavlov performed numerous experiments with other stimuli, such as ringing a bell before giving the dogs their food. Initially, the dogs salivated to the sight of food, but over time began to salivate to the sound of a bell as well. They become conditioned or learn to salivate to the sound of the bell. Learning this kind of association is called classical conditioning and isn't shown only in dogs, but a large variety of species from sea slugs, rats, monkeys, and humans. The discovery of classical conditioning revolutionized how we understand learning and behavior, and allows us to predict or anticipate behavioral responses. John B. Watson, one of the founders of the behavioral perspective of psychology, emphasized the study of observable behaviors and rejected the focus on mental processes and introspection. His argument was that science must be based on data that everyone can agree on, that is reliable and objectively measurable. This would be the beginning of behaviorism, or the behavioral perspective of psychology. While modern psychology rejects the core idea of behaviorism, many aspects of behaviorism remain central to psychological research today. Watson, along with Rosalie Rayner, is most famously known for their experiments on an 11-month-old infant known as Little Albert, which aimed to demonstrate the principles of classical conditioning and the potential for the learning of fears and phobias. Little Albert initially showed no fear towards various stimuli, including white lab rats, rabbits, cotton, masks, and other objects. However, Watson and Rayner exposed Little Albert to a pet white rat. He would reach out and stroke it, as little Albert, once again, showed no fear. Afterwards, Watson and Rayner would strike a steel bar, making a loud noise just behind little Albert's head. Now think about it. It would startle almost anyone, including yourself, right? And it indeed also startled little Albert, who then fell and began to whimper. Very soon, little Albert began to cry and tried to crawl away as soon as he saw the pet rat. And eventually, his fear generalized to other furry objects, including cotton, wool, rabbits, and even fur coats. Watson and Rayner concluded that human reflexes, and in this case fear, could be conditioned. Poor little Albert. Burris Frederick Skinner, or commonly known as B.F. Skinner, was an American behaviorist and known for developing the theory of operant conditioning. Just like Watson, he believed in studying observable behaviors and ignored mental processes. However, he took a different approach than Pavlov, Watson, and Rayner. Instead, he focused on the law of effects, a theory proposed by American psychological researcher Edward Thorndike. The law of effect states that behaviors that are followed by unpleasant consequences are more likely to be repeated, while behaviors followed by unpleasant consequences are less likely to be repeated. After the works of Watson, Thorndike, and Pavlov, Skinner took a scientific approach to animal learning. He wanted to study what happens when an animal was presented with a stimulus, like in Pavlov's dogs, but without the ability to interact with the environment directly. He designed what would become known as Skinner boxes. A Skinner box comprises of a chamber in which a small animal would be placed, usually a pigeon or a white lab rat. In the chamber was a lever connected to a food pellet dispenser, and when pressed by a rat, or pecked in the case of a pigeon, a food pellet would be released for the animal to consume. Over time, the animals learned this and continually pressed the lever to receive food pellets. Skinner then said that only after a certain number of presses that the food pellet would be released, and eventually animals learned this as well. Skinner concluded that he had discovered quantitatively different principles of learning in addition to Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning. In this kind of learning, the animal operated on the environment rather than simply responding to it, such as how Pavlov's dogs reacted to the sound of the bell, or little Albert responded to the clashing sound from the steel bar. The animals learn from their own actions. This is why this form of behaviorism is called operant conditioning. The Skinner box was more complicated than what I just described, but there were also lights, a speaker for sounds, an electrical grid that the animal would respond to based on if they received a food pellet or were punished with a shock. This led to defining reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement is when something pleasant is experienced and will increase the likelihood of a behavior occurring again. And punishment is when something unpleasant is experienced and decreases the likelihood a behavior occurs again. Skinner's principles have been applied in various settings, including parenting, education, and even therapy for behavior modification, in which is called applied behavioral analysis. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, central figures to the humanistic perspective of psychology, which focuses on emphasizing free will, growth-seeking, and self-actualization. Self-actualization refers to the process of realizing and fulfilling one's full potential and striving for personal growth, meaning, and purpose in life. Maslow developed the hierarchy of needs pyramid, in which he describes the steps in reaching self-actualization. Rogers argued that human beings have two basic needs: to receive unconditional positive regard from others in terms of love, respect, etc., And the second basic need is to develop their full potential or self-actualizing. Failure to satisfy, according to Rogers, led to either neurosis or other psychiatric problems. Rogers' work led to many new initiatives and treatments of mental disorders such as group therapy. Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychological researcher whose focus was on cognitive developments in childhood, Piaget identified 4 stages of cognitive development, from infancy to adolescence, and how they reach the ability to handle abstract thoughts. He describes that infants are egocentric at birth and are in the sensory motor stage. Young infants begin to learn to interpret sensory information from their sense organs and coordinate its actions. As the child grows older, they will enter the pre-operational stage, in which a child can only see in its own point of view and has a very limited understanding of how things work together. Next, they enter the concrete operational stage, which is when a child's thinking ability is more advanced than when in the pre-operational stage, but it is still limited to the real, practical world. In the final stage of cognitive development, the child is on the verge of entering adolescence and can now understand abstract and theoretical ideas. These 4 stages is known as Piaget's stages of cognitive development. Lev Vygotsky, a Russian, or in his time a Soviet, psychological researcher who also focused on cognitive development, but argued that a children's cognitive development is a product of the social interactions and language they are exposed to. His most notable theory is the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. ZPD refers to the range of tasks that a learner cannot yet accomplish independently, but can do with the assistance of a more capable individual. Vygotsky viewed the ZPD as the ideal level for learning and emphasized the importance of scaffolding to support learners within their ZPD. Scaffolding refers to the support and guidance provided to learners to help them accomplish tasks or solve problems that they would not be able to do independently. It involves providing temporary support and structure that gradually decreases as a learner gains competence and becomes more independent. Scaffolding can take various forms depending on the context being learned, such as breaking tasks into smaller steps, providing prompts and cues, modeling behavior, offering feedback and encouragement, and adjusting the overall level of support given over time. Aaron Beck, an American psychiatrist and psychotherapist, is often considered the father of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. In contrast to Freud's psychoanalysis, CBT examines thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in the present, not the past, as in psychoanalysis, to improve someone's state of mind right now. Beck proposed that an individual's thoughts, beliefs, and interpretation of events play a significant role in their emotional and behavioral reactions. CBT aims to identify and challenge negative, distorted, or irrational thoughts and replace them with more realistic and adaptive thinking patterns. CBT integrates cognitive restructuring techniques with behavioral strategies to address a range of psychological disorders and is widely used and has been extensively researched, thus demonstrating the effectiveness in treating various mental health conditions. While we have discussed some of the most notable figures in psychology, the ones discussed typically appear in the first chapter of an Introduction to Psychology college textbook. However, there are so many more notable figures within psychology, as you can see here in this long list. Listed here are a variety of other psychological researchers and the concepts, theories, and ideas in which they are most known for. While I wish I can go over every single one, this video would then be several hours long. Ain't nobody got time for that. but hopefully some of them pokes your interest or possibly helps you when doing your own research on these topics. In time, I will discuss these researchers in other videos, and some of the ones discussed in this video will be discussed in further detail in other videos. This was just a brief overview of several historical figures within psychology. I am sure I am missing several, so please, if you don't see one, comment below the researcher and the theory or work they are most known for. I hope this video has helped with understanding where psychology originated from. Thank you all for watching and the support. Until next time, take care.